his big concern is that the birth rate in the U.S. has fallen significantly in the past decade or two. Back, I think it was in 2007, we were at 2.1, which is the replacement rate, so the population keeps growing. Now that's dwindled down to like somewhere in the 1.6 range. So his plan to address that is on several fronts. So one would be giving out more tax credits to families, doubling the child tax credit, which was already increased as part of the Trump tax cuts in 2017 and temporarily expanded by Democrats, but it's since shrunk down a little bit more.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by economics reporter Zach Halaschak. Zach, inflation's obviously been a hot topic for quite some time. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell made some comments or predictions. What did he have to say?
Sure. I mean, it feels like it's the problem that never ends. It's been nearly 3 years of this now, and I think consumers are getting really tired of it. But the other day at the European Central Bank meeting, or annual confab in Portugal, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that he thinks that it'll take quite some time for the Fed to bring inflation back to its healthy level, which is 2%. So the Fed wants inflation to run at 2% on a long-term basis. Right now, it's punching in at over 3% on the CPI, and on the Fed's preferred inflation gauge is like 2.6%. So if Powell said that he thinks it won't get back to that 2% range until late next year or even 2026. So that's quite a ways off when you consider the context of how long the Fed has been fighting this too high inflation.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be a wait and see thing with that, though. Just know where inflation's end up going the rest of the year, and I'm sure there'll be different predictions as it gets closer to that date.
Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is running for Senate as a Republican, and he is hitting his Democratic opponent on a very traditional issue for Republicans, even though he's not the most traditional Republican, and that's taxes. Talk a little bit about that controversy.
Yeah, so he actually obtained the letter before he sent it out, but he sent out this letter to Angela Alsobrooks, who's his opponent, his Democratic opponent, basically calling on her to disavow this huge slate of tax increases and fee increases that has happened since he left office. He was governor of Maryland. While he was governor, he likes to point out that he balanced the budget and came up with a surplus without raising taxes. And now Wes Moore, who's the new governor of Maryland, signed into law all these tax increases, fee increases. Some he didn't directly sign, but he didn't veto because they came through the administrative process within the government of the state. But the Republicans in the state legislature outlined 338 different fee or tax increases that have happened in the past couple of years since Moore's been in office. And they range from things like Uber tax, so every time you get in a ride share, you have to pay a certain surcharge, to higher fees for vehicle registration, or registering as a barber, or just various miscellaneous things. It's just this whole bevy of minor, but not so minor when they add up, increases. And so the letter was basically calling on his opponent to disavow those, to not support them, and to kind of be, as he said, on the side of the taxpayer in this. And so I reached out to the Alsobrooks campaign, and her campaign manager, her communications director basically told me, didn't say they were going to disavow that, didn't really address the question at the core of the letter, because she kind of pointed out that they want her to be senator because she would be the key 51st vote to keeping Democratic control, and then also kind of used it to bash Hogan on his support within the corporate community. She kind of tied him to like corporate Wall Street and said that Alsobrooks would not be a vote for Wall Street. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of it. Is it's a pretty normal political move to have these open letters for your opponent, but it's really shows that he's trying to frame the race in terms of pocketbooks of Marylanders, and kind of drawing the contrast between himself and Alsobrooks, with him being the one on the side of taxpayers.
You've been talking to Senate candidates about what their economic plans are, and the latest person you've interviewed is Republican Dave McCormick, who's running for Senate in Pennsylvania. What were some of his plans?
Yeah, so I actually spoke to McCormick in the context of his new family plan that he just rolled out. And it's pretty all-encompassing, and one would expect it to be actually pretty costly, too, for a Republican. But his big concern is that the birth rate in the U.S. has fallen significantly in the past decade or two. Back, I think it was in 2007, we were at 2.1, which is the replacement rate, so the population keeps growing. Now that's dwindled down to like somewhere in the 1.6 range. So his plan to address that is on several fronts. So one would be giving out more tax credits to families, doubling the child tax credit, which was already increased as part of the Trump tax cuts in 2017 and temporarily expanded by Democrats, but it's since shrunk down a little bit more. But it would be doubling that. Plus, he has an idea of $15,000 tax credits for IVF treatment to help families who might not be able to conceive naturally,
Right.
to have more children, and then also like I think there was a savings account where you could have tax-free $10,000 spending on childcare, that sort of thing, a year of Medicaid coverage for postpartum care for the mother. So this whole bevy of different incentives to build a family and to have
Sure.
children, and so that's kind of I asked him about the cost because as conservatives you want to care about the budget
Right.
and about debts and deficits, but he said that the cost of not acting would be too high to just let it run its course, and that it's a more longer term investment, so it might cost more up front, but 20, 30 years from now when you have all these new taxpayers, that's more revenue.
Paying into the system.
Correct, yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Zach.
Yep.
You can read Zach and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.